So nobody likes to invest in a friendship of any kind and have it blow up. That is just that's the worst. I don't care if you're a guy, a girl, young, old, it doesn't matter. It's just the worst feeling. If you've ever had a friendship kind of blow up, if somebody let you down, disappointed you in a huge way, you realize that they weren't who you thought, it's just a worst feeling, and you could feel kind of embarrassed, ashamed, even violated. You can't believe you spent that much time in a connection and had it go south. I mean, it's just amazing the range of emotions that people have about friendships that don't work out. And that's what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about being closely connected with people and the wisdom that we need to use when we work on those connections and we try and build life into those connections. So last week we talked about how Jesus actually prayed that the believers of Jesus would be so closely bonded together, it would be the same as the way that he is bonded together with the Father in heaven, the one who sent him. And he prayed that we would be so close that people would actually see the truth in the gospel by the way that the believers are related to one another. There's some kind of a miracle in that people need to see, and that's what he prayed for. And so today I'm just talking about the care that we need to put into those connections, because although we desperately need to have close connections with one another in the church, we're suffering from a lack of it. At the same time, you have to be careful. You have to use caution and wisdom. And I want to share a couple of things that are really, really helpful to those who are working on building those connections. So there are a couple of proverbs from King Solomon, way old school, way back in the day, that have to do with friendship. And I want to share with you just a couple of those. Here's one from Proverbs 18:24. Solomon speaking, he says, "One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother." Now, the last piece about there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother, that's just saying, hey, if you find somebody who sticks closer than a brother, that's a friend. There's a friend, okay? That's a real friend. You want to make those kinds of friends. Awesome. But this part in the front is a warning, a caution to people as they build friendships. And he says, one who's an unreliable friend soon comes to ruin. Well, wait a minute, ruin? I mean, doesn't that seem a little extreme to you? It does to me. Ruin? I mean, this isn't like, the Middle Ages anymore, right? I mean, are our lives going to be ruined just because we have an unreliable friend? But I want you to back up for a moment and just think through what it means to be unreliable. So if you have someone in your life who's always saying that they're going to do something and then doesn't do it, if you have someone that says, hey, you can trust me to do so and so, you can trust me to not blabber this secret around, if you find that person just can't handle that kind of responsibility, you've got somebody who's unreliable. That's someone you can't rely on. You can't count on them. And there are a lot of different ways to be unreliable. I mean, you could say that if you have a friend that makes a plan with you and then something more interesting pops up and they just go off and do that thing because it's more interesting, that would be one version of an unreliable friend. If you have a friend that you need to pay a bill at a certain time because you're sharing the rent with them, and they just never ever do it, that would be an unreliable friend. Or maybe you have somebody that just isn't committed to being honest with you when it counts. That's an unreliable friend. And Solomon is saying, look, if you have somebody like that you've become closely connected with as a confidant or as a sharer in some kind of a mission or a project or a work or just you're sharing life with that person, there's some damage that's going to come eventually. It may not be right away, but it's going to happen. And I know that in all of us, we just have this thing, it's like built in, where we say, if I'm close with someone, I can trust that person. I can rely on them. Yeah, maybe they're a little flaky, when it doesn't matter that much, but when it counts, if it's really going to count, I know I know they're going to be there. I know they're going to show up. I know they won't disappoint me. Solomon is saying, look, you can be really close with somebody, and that won't happen that way. If they're unreliable, they'll be unreliable, whether they're your friend, whether they're somebody else's friend. It doesn't matter. If you're going to be unreliable, you'll be unreliable, no matter what is going on around you, until something different happens. Something transforms inside of you, and you have some convictions. If you're growing, then that'll change. But as you are, that's the way it's probably going to be. So Solomon says this, and it should send up red flags. If you see somebody and you see a pattern of unreliability, there should be little red flags. It happens to me, it happens to you, I'm guessing. And I think all that we really need to do from this proverb is to pay attention to those red flags and to say, you know what, if I see a pattern of unreliability, I'm going to be careful to limit how close I allow myself to become connected with that person. I'll be friendly, I'll be kind, I'll be generous, I'll be forward, I'll be all those good things, but I'm going to limit how much I put myself in a place to rely on that person as a friend. I just shouldn't do that. And that's wisdom, Solomon says. Now, I know the thing that you're thinking. You're thinking, well, I can still be friends with somebody, and they can be unreliable, and I'll just be careful that I don't rely on them for anything, but we'll still be friends. We'll be tight. We'll hang together. We'll go do things together. We'll talk. We'll share. That kind of stuff. I don't think that's a good idea, and this is why. Because you and I are limited in how much friendship we can actually do in a week. We have things to do. We have work to do. We have people we're responsible for. We have stuff to take care of at home. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of all these things. And there's just a limited amount of time. There are only so many people in your life that you can actually be close with the way that Jesus was describing fellowship. Very, very few. You're not going to be able to be close with 50 people. You're not going to be able to be close with 20 people. Jesus was a full-time discipler. He was close with 12, but only really close with like 3. So if you as a normal, natural person are thinking, I'm going to be close with 15 people, I don't think so. And what I mean is that you needing to be close with people and having only so much time means that when the time comes for you to need people, you're going to reach for the people you're close with. You're going to have to. You're not going to feel like you can just reach out for whoever, even though you're not close with. That's not what we do. We don't feel right about that. It's awkward. It's just odd. So you're going to reach for the people that you were able to become close with. And if the people that you were able to become close with are unreliable, you're not going to have anybody. And that's rough. That's really rough. You don't want to be like that. And that's kind of along the lines of the proverb we shared a couple weeks ago. Pity a person who falls and has no one to help them up. You should pity that person. That's a bad, bad situation to fall and have nobody close that could actually help you up or even help you from falling in the first place. This other piece of wisdom that Solomon shares, it's an oldie but a goodie. And here it is from Proverbs 13:20. He says, "A man who walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm." So if your life is closely connected with a wise person, if you're entwined with a wise person's life and the things that you do and share and all that good stuff, you will naturally begin to align yourself with whatever wisdom they have in their life. And if you have any wisdom to share with them, then you'll probably influence them as well. Solomon says that's a great thing, but it's a double-edged sword. The same is true if you closely intertwine your life with someone who Solomon calls a fool. He says damage is coming your way. The damage is coming. A fool suffers harm. That's bad. That's ruin. Like the first one, it's damage. And a fool, I don't know if you define it this way, but I define a fool as someone who just doesn't want wisdom. They see wisdom, they may be able to wrap their mind around it, but they don't want it. They reject it. And they continue a bad pattern again and again and again without any hope of changing it. That's how Solomon defines a fool. So Solomon says, if you become closely intertwined with a fool, some of that fool's decisions are going to be your decisions, whether you like them or not. You're going to end up paying the dues for foolish decisions that you didn't even make. And although most of us think that we can probably just kind of keep enough distance and still be close with people so that their stuff doesn't affect us, experience teaches us otherwise. I don't know if you've ever had a friend that made foolish decisions again and again and again, but you know as well as I, eventually they start to affect you. Somehow they impact you. Somehow, the bungle of the decision that was bad, you end up paying somehow, either through your reputation or your credibility or financially, or you end up in a situation you never wanted to be in because you feel obligated as their friend to help them through it. Now you're dealing with it. There's a million different ways a foolish decision of somebody who's close to you can affect you. It doesn't have to be anything typical. I mean, hey, I talk to people all the time who try to set up a deal with their friends to rent together, lease an apartment, and they can't afford it on their own. They say, hey, I got 3 friends, we can all pitch in together, we can afford it. And I always ask the same question: how reliable are your friends? Well, they say, well, we're friends, we're close. They always talk about how close they are, but that's not actually the question I'm asking. I'm saying, how reliable are your friends? I didn't ask how close you are with your friends. And we tend to think that being close means that they will be reliable. If we just be closer, then they will come through for us. They have to, because we're friends. And the truth is, just like the reliability thing in the first proverb, a person who makes foolish decisions again and again and again isn't going to change how they make decisions just because you're involved. I know that we want to think that. We love to think that. It hurts us not to think that. But the truth being said, it's usually not the way it goes. If someone isn't caring enough about their own life and the outcomes of their own decisions in the long term, they probably aren't at the place in life where they're going to care about how things go for you too. We tend to think, if I'm living inside of my box where my life is and my friend is over here in their box right next to me, if they get involved in my life a little bit and their life overlaps with my life, well, then they would be extra careful. They would be sure not to cause any damage to my life. And unfortunately, it's just not the case. Sometimes in romantic relationships, here's an example. Somebody in a romantic relationship of any kind, dating or married, says, you know what, I'm going to make this decision, and I know if so-and-so was here, they probably wouldn't like it, but I'm here by myself, and I'm making this decision. And, I'm just going to keep it from affecting them. They don't even have to hear about it. They don't even have to know about it. But the truth is, if you're very closely connected, there's no way to separate your lives in this nice, clean line, like at the edge of a box, where someone's decisions don't impact the person in the next box. When you're close, your boxes are basically the same box. You're in the same space. And you can't make decisions that don't impact the person next to you. It's like saying, we're going to get married, and we're going to combine our checking accounts, and we're going to combine our property, if we have any property, and we're going to move into this place together. But I'm going to make some financial decisions that don't impact you. Well, it's just not possible, right? I mean, you're relying on each other to be able to put your resources together and your time and your energy to pay the bills and do all this stuff. You can't make a decision anymore that doesn't impact the other person, as much as you might like to believe it. So all this is to say, if you see a pattern of unreliability or of decisions that ignore wisdom time and time again, you should put up a little red flag. Your mind will put up a red flag, and you should say, hey, you know what? I need to limit how much deeper the connection here goes, because I need to be careful that I don't end up entwining my life with someone else's life if I know that I can't actually rely on them to make good decisions. It doesn't mean you have to be mean-spirited or judgmental or harsh or any of that stuff. You can be totally good to a person and still not become closely connected at this higher level. As Pastor Mike would say, you don't want to build a door into your life where there really should be a window. We can't have doorways into our lives with just anybody and everybody, and nobody does that. You don't do that. I don't do that. Nobody does that. But you can build a doorway into your life with somebody that it shouldn't have a doorway into your life. That's very easy to do. And so you need to use some caution and pay attention to those red flags when they pop up. I know it's hard. I know it's hard because it seems kind of mean, or it seems kind of like, I just don't love people if I won't let them in. But the truth is, you can't be close with everybody, and you shouldn't be close with everybody. You shouldn't be sharing your stuff and being totally transparent with every single person you meet about everything that you've done, every regret that you have, every hope that you have. You can't do that. It's just not smart. People don't always have your best interests in heart. In fact, it's usually only the people you're closest with that really have your best interests at heart. So you need to be careful. Don't put yourself in a position to rely financially on someone who's not reliable. It's not good for them. It's not good for you. It's just going to blow up later on, and there's going to be animosity where there could have just been cordiality. You don't want to do that. Don't put yourself in a position to rely on someone for practical help on a regular basis if you know they can't actually be relied on. If you know that somebody just doesn't grow from wisdom, it doesn't want to grow, doesn't show a humble spirit, don't put yourself in a position to need an apology from them sometime soon and realize that they aren't capable of giving it. They don't think they need to. That's going to blow up. There's going to be tension and hostility at some point. It's going to be worse than it would have been if you'd just been careful to limit the depth of that relationship. That's where I'm going to leave you today. I want you to use wisdom, listen to Solomon, and remember this. People are very much like icebergs. When you see something on the surface, you should expect more of it if you get closer. And we're all sailing through this sea of life in our own little ship, and we're looking out there for the icebergs, and we see things that may send up red flags, red alerts, but sometimes we may say, you know what, I'm just going to get in closer, and then hopefully it'll be okay. Hopefully it's not a very big iceberg. Hopefully it's not as bad as it seems to be on the surface. You need to use more caution than that. You need to use more caution than that. That's all I've got to say for today. I'll see you next week. Hopefully, God helping us, we're going to be live streaming next week's service right at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a little bit different for us because we've been doing recordings like this for some time now. But next week, our ducks should be in a row, and we'll be live streaming. So I hope that you can be with us. See you then.